3 hours on the road felt like a marathon I hadn't signed up for. And by the time I pulled into Belle's new place, some condo on the outskirts of town, I felt every second of it in my back and my eyes. The place wasn't even furnished yet. But that didn't stop Belle from smiling like she'd bought a palace. Marlo was already inside, perched on a half-unwrapped sofa, swirling a glass of wine like she'd been there for days. I let myself in, carrying my battered toolbox in one hand and a small overnight bag in the other. I'd cleared my schedule, rescheduled 2 car appointments, and delayed an engine rebuild just so I could be here, because that's what husbands do, right? They show up, they lift, they fix. "Hey, Belle," I said, giving her a small smile. She beamed back at me like I was a delivery guy with the wrong package. "So?" I asked. "Where do you want me to crash tonight?" She blinked at me, genuinely confused. "The guest room is for family." The sentence dropped like a tire iron on my chest. For a second, I thought maybe she was joking, that any moment she'd grin and say, kidding, "Come on, let me show you." But her smile didn't reach her eyes. Marlo didn't even look up. "The porch has a couch," she said, her voice breezy, as if we were discussing restaurant seating. I glanced at the couch, a stained, sagging thing with a throw blanket that might have been white once but now looked like a rag left out in the rain. My chest tightened. I turned back to Marlo. "Seriously?" She didn't answer. She just took another sip of her wine and looked past me, like I'd ceased to exist the moment I'd asked for a place to sleep. I nodded slowly, the weight of it settling in my bones. The mechanic in me wanted to fix something, tighten a bolt, patch a leak, but this wasn't something I could fix. I set my overnight bag on the porch and stared at the couch. Cold air drifted in from the street, cutting through my shirt and down to my skin. It smelled like damp concrete and last week's trash day. I dropped down onto the cushions, feeling the springs groan beneath me. I'd slept in worse places. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the words, the unspoken ones and the spoken ones. "The guest room is for family." That was the part that stung. I was the guy who'd built Belle's deck last summer, who'd stayed up late soldering a broken lamp for Marlo when she'd complained about the lighting. I changed tires, jump-started dead cars, carried groceries, moved boxes. And now I was on the porch like an afterthought, like a package left by the door in the rain. I pulled my jacket tighter around my shoulders, but the cold had already worked its way in. I could hear them inside. Belle's laugh, sharp and delighted, the sound of a cork popping, the low murmur of Marlo's voice blending in. My chest ached. I didn't want to make a scene. That wasn't who I was. I wasn't going to beg for a place in the guest room or a spot at the table. I'd learned a long time ago that asking for respect from people who didn't see you as deserving was like begging for air from a vacuum. It was better to take what was given. And remember, that's what I did that night. I laid down on that sagging couch, every spring a reminder of the welcome I didn't have. I stared at the ceiling, at the way the shadows crept along the porch beams. I listened to the laughter drifting from inside. Each laugh, another nail in the coffin of something I hadn't realized was dying. I thought about the miles I'd driven, the time I'd carved out of a week that didn't have much space in it. I thought about the customers I'd left waiting, the jobs that would pile up. I thought about Marlo, my wife inside, glass in hand, smiling like it was a celebration I'd never been invited to. I thought about how easy it had been for her to put me on the porch, how easy it had been to let me sleep where the cold and damp would find me, as if I were some delivery guy they didn't want to bring in. And in that cold, on that damp cushion, something snapped inside me, quietly, like a small fracture you don't feel at first but no ache in the morning. I realized I wasn't part of her family anymore. Not really. I was a handyman, a mechanic, a convenience, a tool to be used when needed, then left on the porch when I didn't match the decor. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just lay there, my eyes open, watching the night inch by. And in that darkness, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would remember every word, every look, every time they made me feel like the porch was where I belonged. I would remember, and one day I'd make them remember too. Morning came on slow feet, gray and hesitant, as if even the sun didn't want to witness the mess waiting for me inside that house. My back ached from the lumpy couch. My shirt damp from the chill that had settled into the porch overnight. Every bone in my body felt like it had been twisted in my sleep, though I doubted I'd slept at all. I sat up, rubbing the back of my neck, and listened to the faint laughter drifting through the front door. Laughter like it was any other morning, like I wasn't out here. A mechanical afterthought left on the curb. I shoved myself off the couch and pushed the door open. The hinges whined, a small protest that echoed the ache in my chest. Belle and Marlowe were in the kitchen. They looked as fresh as if they'd slept on clouds, and not that porch with its moldy cushion. Marlowe had her hair in a neat twist, the one she always did when she wanted to look both casual and superior. Belle, on the other hand, had that easy, effortless smile that told me she'd already erased the memory of last night. A new day, new performance. "Morning," I said, my voice gravelly from the cold. Neither of them looked up immediately. Marlowe finally turned her eyes, flicking over me like I was an unexpected guest, a fly that had wandered in. "Hey," she said, her tone flat as she gestured at the plate on the counter. "Eggs are cold, but there's toast." I stared at the plate. 2 pale, rubbery eggs sitting like a challenge. The toast was dry, the kind you could use to sand furniture. I tried to smile, but it felt forced, alien. "Thanks," I muttered, pulled out a chair and sat down. Belle laughed at something Marlowe had said, and the sound felt like glass cracking under pressure. I couldn't even catch the joke. My mind was too busy sifting through the quiet that had settled between us. I picked up the toast and took a bite. It crumbled like a memory I'd rather forget. Dry and lifeless. I forced it down. Marlowe looked at me, her eyebrow arched, lips curled. "You could have just booked a hotel if you had a job worth mentioning," she said. Her words landed like a slap. Cold eggs and colder words. I let them settle in deep where they could ache, but not show. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough in my chest. I finished chewing every bite. A reminder that